and happy Tuesday edition of the Seahawks Podcast. Gentlemen, how's it going today?
Pretty good, I suppose.
Zeb really selling it, really selling the fact we're doing it on Tuesday, a little bit later than we've done most of the season. But we're together, we're here.
A little bit.
Oh.
Later.
But yeah, gentlemen, it's Tuesday. We are the Seahawks FanTable Podcast, and we're here to talk Seahawks. I know it was a really nice win on Sunday against the Detroit Lions. I always want to call them the Tigers. I don't know why. I don't watch baseball, but I keep wanting to refer them to the Tigers, but they are the Detroit Lions. And it's a pretty solid win, wouldn't you say?
I think that's a pretty good word for it. Solid.
It was way more than solid. It wasn't even as close as the score indicated. If it had been closer, like the Seahawks could have scored more points. It's just at one point they decided not to, where they decided to take an unnecessary risk, and you give up a touchdown very late. That doesn't really mean anything. I'd go as far as beatdown. Beatdown's like one great.
Beatdown? I can get behind beatdown, and I would say I would get behind
like
beatdown.
34 yards rushing after they.
Yeah, beatdown because of the rushing. The rushing really is what kind of told the story of that game, right?
Like all of a sudden, like all week long, the whole your they want to rush the ball. They're gonna all it's in like they're awesome ball and like nah, take that home. Well, how's that?
Yeah, got a little static there. But yeah, it's
professional. Aim to please here. I'm having audio difficulties. I'm back in.
All right. Well, I think the one thing about the game in itself is there's lots of ways to describe it, and pretty much all of them are positive, right? Like, I can't think of anything. Like, we talk maybe about them going for it on fourth down, but then they also went for it on fourth down, like, deep in their own end, like, not, like, with little of no room to play around with. But there's only positive ways to talk about this game. And, you know, it was dominant. That's really another way to say it because of the style of game they play. So Seahawks thoroughly dominate the Detroit Lions for their third row win of the season. Russell Wilson posts the first perfect quarterback game in Seahawks history by going 14-17. Two of those throws were in the end zone. One of them was a non-touchdown call because Nick Vannett went out of bounds. The second incompletion was a throw to Doug Baldwin. If Doug's healthy, he gets that second foot in bounds. And the first incomplete was the one time that he was really scrambled and kind of moved out of the pocket, but he still hit the hands. I think it was to Nick Vannett too. 248 yards.
Wait. If we're picking on Nick Vannett, I'm sticking up for Nick Vannett. The first one, the touchdown, that's bullcrap. Because he didn't step out of bounds. He was pushed out of bounds. And so it becomes like a cascading penalty thing, right?
Right.
They decided that the push out of bounds isn't big enough to call a penalty on. But since it results a penalty on him, it is a big enough penalty because it affected the game, right? You don't call a penalty if it doesn't affect the thing. But if you have to end up having to call a penalty to him because he goes out of the back of the end zone because he was pushed, well, he was only out of the end zone literally because of what the defender did. So that should have been actually a penalty on the defense. It should have been a holding or an illegal contact downfield because it literally is. I agree it's the type of thing you would normally call, but since it makes it so that it's illegal for him to touch the ball, you have to call that.
It's true, and the thing that I thought was interesting about that specific play is that they didn't ever rule it a touchdown. They just kind of said, nope, hats off, stepped out of bound, flag. And they said they didn't even really award the touchdown. So that's like
it's
another
one of those things where, like, when in the early days of, instant replay was taking a lot longer and how they did it took longer. And so certain types of plays aren't reviewable. But with today's technology and with today's experience with it, a couple of these things, like penalties, they should make reviewable, in my opinion.
And
I
that's
don't
the
love
thing.
the replay, but
Because
those
of flags involved in the play, it's not really reviewable. They're not willing to go to those lengths, which is, like you're saying, it's kind of weird.
It's anachronistic at this point. I mean, like, for example, especially like this was a good example of that game because there was the Nick Vinnick catch that, again, it's the cascading penalty, and then there was also the 57
yard pass interference.
That's got to be reviewable. You got to have somebody else to like step in, because you know why they called it, but there's got to be somebody in New York going like, you can't have refs deciding the game to that degree, because without that penalty, the game's over, right? There's no tension left. It's over without that penalty. You have some guy come in and they're fighting, they're hand fighting, and you're gonna like change the game. Come on,
Yeah.
You can't do that. You cannot do that.
But again, more positive news. Chris Carson runs for his third 100-yard rushing game with a strong touchdown. KJ Wright, Ed Dixon show up for the first time in 2018 and kind of show us what we've been missing. I mean, we haven't had a really strong tight end presence since Will Dissly went down. And the Seahawks are going to return home for only the third time this year to face the Los Angeles Chargers of Carson, California. This is the Seahawks FanTable Podcast brought to you by Hawkscast Forum. Quick shout out to Birdfinger, who's already on the Twitch chat, loving the music that's produced by D Brown on SoundCloud. So check out the link. And Birdfinger says Rookie of the Year, Michael Dixon. Before we get into our topics, let's talk about that play. So, Zeb, the fourth down play by Michael Dixon deep in the end zone. Can you kind of describe what that was like for you to watch that situation?
It was awesome. I've seen people complaining that he shouldn't have done that. It shouldn't be within his ability to make that kind of call, to decide to do something like that. But I don't care. It worked. It's great. If it hadn't worked, sure, be mad about it. But guess what? It worked. And it was awesome, and I'm glad he did it.
Ross, what about you? What were you thinking during that process?
During the actual play?
Yes.
My thinking was pretty much like this. No. Yes! That's how... it's funny, because since then, I've heard people argue about it, and it's one of those, like, life isn't fair kind of deals, because Ty Montgomery today gets traded for essentially the same thing, right?
Right.
Ty Montgomery got traded on a get out of town deal. 7th round pick for Ty Montgomery because he didn't take a knee in the end zone. He ran it out, and it didn't work out for him because he fumbled. Even though he's not a fumbler, but he fumbled. So it's like one of those some people say it's not fair. There's like people who think it all should be like every situation should be standard, one size fits all kind of judgment. But in fact, results matter, man. If you break the theory, and you're like a 5th round pick, and you're a punter, and you're a rookie, and you decide to take the game into your own hands, and you do that, but it works out, especially if you're playing for Pete Carroll, then you know what? You're the hero, and he's gonna laugh with you. I mean, like, I dare say if Holmgren was still the coach, even if it worked out, the interviews after sounded different. But, and people say, hey, what if Ty Montgomery had run it back for a touchdown? He didn't. He fumbled. And that's unfortunate for him how it ended. But you know what? Like, again, results matter.
But that's actually a really good contrast. That's the idea of what a Mike Holmgren-led offense, special teams, and defense, they're supposed to play 100% in control. Whereas Pete Carroll is kind of totally opposite of that. So let's actually get into topic number 1, because that goes perfectly into what we want to talk about. So, Ross, this is for you. Topic number 1. Could this season show why Pete is an all-time great great coach in the NFL?
Yeah. I mean, if he gets to another Super Bowl, it's iced. But here's the thing. I sense that a couple things are going to limit his legacy, and that's just and that's not fair. I don't think he'll ever actually be. Right now, to me, he's the second best coach in the NFL, and I think a lot of people do think that, especially the more. I guess, sort of academically inclined pundits, football pundits, not like the ex-players who, are there just because they're a name. But I just feel like something about Pete and his new aginess and the fact that he's like a new agey dude and in Seattle, which is a bit of a hipster city, new agey kind of place as well, that I think all that works against him. I don't think like the world's quite ready for Pete Carroll. I don't think America at this moment but America looks like it's ready for the Pete Carroll style of play. And I think a lot of people resent that. And it just always feels like smoke and mirrors to a lot of people, I feel like. And so I don't think it's going to, for a lot of casual fans, I don't think he's ever going to be seen that way. But I think the more, like, the people, the more knowledgeable, I guess, football fans, I think, yeah, this is definitely do it. This season should do it. I mean, if we finish with 9 or 10 wins, I don't know how he's not in consideration for Coach of the Year, and John Schneider as well. They seem to have found their mojo again, right? I don't know.
They sure do.
Zeb, what about you? How would you categorize the potential of what Pete could be after this season?
I think what Ross said in particular about there being some negative marks, I guess, on Pete Carroll throughout the years that may or may not be fair. Those are the type of things that would stop him from being considered all-time great this season, with the exception of, I think, if we go to win the Super Bowl, which is obviously, long shot, could happen, but it's not by any means guaranteed. If he were to do that this season, I think you have to consider him an all-time great. But if it's anything short of that, I don't think this season is going to be enough. He'd have to put together another string of successful seasons. But I think ultimately either another Super Bowl win or another long sustained success is what it's going to take.
Are we in a second wave of success? Is 9-7 so bad that you wouldn't just consider this just another successful year? Because, for example, the Patriots under Belichick, they have actually missed the playoffs at least 1 year. When, just Tom Brady was hurt, but they still had like an 11-5 record, but just happened to miss it because of weird stats that year, standings that year. So I guess my question, in your impression, is this the beginning of a second round of awesome success, or is this just is it just part of the same success? I
feel like it depends on how successful they are. If it's just a one and done in the playoffs, or less than that, then I think it's definitely a dip in the success. If we win a couple of playoff games, or we challenge for the Super Bowl for a couple of years, I think that combined with the fact that there has been so much turnover, but this feels like a new wave because of the players on the field. I think that those two things combined will make it feel like a second wave.
I agree with that too.
But just real quick before I hand over, real quick, just for something to consideration, is it also possible we're not seeing it correctly because we're in the middle of it? Like, if, for example, this year we go 10-6 and we're like first round of playoffs, next year we're 12-4 and we go deep, maybe even Super Bowl or NFC Championship game, and then we do that like 2 years in a row or something, then will it feel like, or will it still always feel like two rolls of it because of different players?
I think the farther away we get from it, the more it'll feel like one sustained length. But I think
with the Patriots, I don't really see it as, obviously they have actually pretty massive turnover year to year in the Patriots, except for Tom Brady. And usually, the occasional token defender, receiver, whatever, to help. But I don't think we see this, like Patriots, we don't perceive it to be different roles of success. We just see it we call it like the Belichick era, right?
Yeah, but that's the unique thing where Bill Belichick is the longest tenured coach in the NFL. Pete Carroll is tied for the 7th most tenured coach, tied with Jason Garrett.
Jesus, you looked that up today.
I did look that up because I was really interested in this question, because I think you guys are both right. It kind of depends on how you want to define all-time great. In Seattle, by far, he's the best coach of all time. Bill Belichick is the greatest head coach of all time in football, but I do think Pete is second based upon what he's able to do, because not a lot of coaches
ever.
Yeah, because not a lot of coaches get to have two waves of huge success. Mike Holmgren is one, but he didn't see the same level of success. He was successful with Brett Favre. He was successful with Matt Hasselbeck. Bill Walsh was successful with Joe Montana and Steve Young. But the difference, though, is none of those guys played in the salary cap era of today. And the thing is, Pete Carroll's trying to do it in such an unconventional way. So, to answer the question for me, what makes Pete Carroll an all-time great is the fact that this looks like it's leading up to another window. Yeah, our window was closed for 1 year because we went 9-7 and didn't make the playoffs, but there is such a good chance that this 4-3 team, which again, we're talking about a 4-3 team, looks so different. There's a lot of question marks for sure, but this has a chance. They have this chance, and I think that we as fans, even though we're biased, this is something different. This is so completely different from what we saw last year, which you're not pining away and say like, oh, well, if they can do this or if they can do that, because we saw flashes. We saw flashes when they played Philadelphia and they played Dallas late in the season, but they were 8-4 and ended up 9-7. I mean, that's one of the worst finishes I've ever seen in the Pete Carroll era, except for maybe 2011, but that was still a bad team. You know, this team we don't think to be bad. But if Pete can do that, if Pete can get this team to the playoffs, make a mini run, get into the second round, get into the NFC Championship game, I don't know how you can talk other than positively about where Pete Carroll is all time, based upon this era and based upon the fact that we are seeing him bring in new players and filling spots that were vacated by All-Pro, Pro Bowl, Hall of Fame, potentially caliber players. That boggles my mind that that's what Pete and John are able to do.
It feels, I don't know.
But I understand your hesitation, because the hesitation is we're still in the middle of it. Who knows what's going to happen? But that's why I think it's a fun question to ask, because you can't deny that there's that potential, right?
I'm going to say he's not better than Don Shula at this point. I don't know if you know Don Shula very well.
Yeah, of the Dolphins, but you know, I'm a little bit younger than you guys. My history is not as tied to the older guard.
Don Shula's old for me. I mean, I just pulled it up to check because I'm cheating. But 1967, he's got the Baltimore Colts with a winning record of 11-1 and 2 ties, which is really weird. That's with the Baltimore Colts, right?
Right.
And then, of course, in 72, he's got the first
perfect and only perfect season, yeah.
And then 73, he's got them back in the playoffs. So, during a 14-game season only, from 70 to 75, the Miami Dolphins won at least 10 games every year. And then they take a quick dip, but then by 77 to 79, they're 10 wins again. And then they go down a little bit, but then by 83, when they get Dan Marino, they're back to 14 to 12 wins. And as late as 1994, he's got 10 wins again. So that's 3 decades of winning. And he ends up with a 6-7-7. That's with 2 different teams. I don't know. It's a different era, of course. But, the salary cap era also helps you build. In the non-salary cap era, we would have never gotten Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett. So
I think the salary cap era made it so a lot more teams can be competitive, but it was hard to be sustainable. So I think it is a difficult question, because we are talking about different eras, different styles of play, and different hands that teams have to deal with. But I think he deserves to be in the conversation.
I think he has to get to the Super Bowl or win the Super Bowl at least. If he win it one more time, I think he's in the conversation. If he gets to it multiple times and doesn't win it, I think he could still be in the conversation. But I really think it hinges on him getting to and winning another championship. Personally.
Well then let's take that to topic number 2, because topic number 2 is all about that. So, Zeb, this one's for you. Topic number 2 is quote unquote limiting Russell Wilson the winning formula.
From our perspective,
Yeah, from perspective and limiting, however you want to define that. We're talking about a quarterback that hasn't passed for 300 yards except for one game in 7 games this year.
Okay, I'll probably, when I'm done speaking here, I don't know if I'm going to have made a lot of sense. This isn't necessarily something I feel like I have a really good grasp or understanding on how it all works. But I don't know that limiting Russell Wilson is the important part of it as much as it's being at least pretty good at all the other stuff besides Russell Wilson. So Russell's the kind of guy that can win games, obviously not literally single-handedly, but he can put the team on his back and take us to victory. But I think when we're at least average or better at things like running and blocking and defense, I think that just makes things so much easier for Russell. Now, if we're talking specifically about them pulling back and not giving him the entire playbook to work with, which has been done in the past, I guess, or trying to convince him to try to play from the pocket and not to scramble all the time, which clearly he's not running nearly as much as he used to these days. I think all those things are helping the Seahawks be successful because of the fact that we're getting better at the other things, better at being able to run the ball consistently, all the things you want to be able to do, convert on third downs and have the defense get turnovers for you, which they've been pretty impressive at this season. So I don't know that it's necessarily limiting Russell. That's the key, but getting to limit Russell because you're good at other things, I think is definitely part of the winning formula.
Ross, what about you?
For me, this kind of points to what one of my themes I've talked about before with you guys, where I think a lot of the modern NFL, what really distinguishes everything is the coaching. And that means 2 things, like the actual teaching, coaching, and the ability to teach players in an era where players don't always want to be taught. And also like having the right system in place, your playbook and when to implement the playbook and the conditioning and preparation and everything else that goes into actually having like a system, a program. And I think, the idea is to limit Russell Wilson, but not that, like Zeb said, it's not that you have to limit him. He's a top 5 quarterback. I can't believe people still debate that.
He's not tall enough, Ross.
Yeah, well, he didn't go to Harvard. But the thing is, Pete Carroll's got a system, and you put the quarterback in the right system, and that system is a winning system, and that system really works best when you're not over-relying on a quarterback. Because when you over-rely on a quarterback, it makes you two-dimensional, and all sorts of other things fall apart. And this is why, for example, the Detroit Lions don't go everywhere. Like, you drop back and you throw the ball 48 times. Or people talk about Peyton Manning. Like, Peyton Manning wasn't – they always said he choked in the playoffs, right? He didn't choke in the playoffs. He was in a system that's very, very, very fragile. You throw the ball 48 times a game, and things fall apart for you. That you're not very flexible. You just got to move the ball down the field. Every time you throw an incomplete pass, it's going to stop the clock. You're not running the clock out. You're tipping off the defense what you're doing. So if somebody catches on to you for a game, your whole thing falls apart. But they have their magic number. What is it, 54?
56, I think.
56, 54. It's an
completions and run attempts.
Right. Like run attempts plus completions should be something like 54 or 56. It's an oddly specific number, so somebody sat down and had their own version of advanced metrics, which I don't normally believe in football, but obviously this one works because every time they do it, they win. And so, it's not that you have to limit Russell Wilson. It's you've got the system that you still need to have a dynamic quarterback to win. So you have to have a good quarterback. I mean, we saw what happened with Tavares Jackson. No offense, Tavares. But you saw what happened, the same system with him. It didn't look the same at all, right?
Right.
So it's just a system, but you have to have the right quarterback in it. And that doesn't mean he's even a system quarterback, because you could put Russell Wilson and move him to Detroit, and they'd still get just as far as every year. But I really believe that overall their system wouldn't really get them as far as they want to on offense. Because you got to... advanced metrics guys are going to tell you on Twitter, especially the first 2 weeks of the season, that running is like the age of the dinosaurs. But there's a lot to be said for it today. And another episode one day we will talk about ball approach. If everybody else is basing their defense on you throwing the ball, then you should run.
Which is kind of interesting because the Seahawks defense is designed to stop the run and make your pass one-dimensional, sit back, force you to kind of dink and duck down the field. But the offense, the way that it's constructed, it's to make it so your quarterback maximizes. And I think that's what sets Russell Wilson apart from any other quarterback. He maximizes his opportunity more so than many, many other quarterbacks, which is why he's a tier 1 guy, because he does so well with the opportunities. I mean, the fact that he had 3 incompletes in that game, had a perfect quarterback rating, regardless of what you think about that, he still had an amazing day by all metrics, however you want to calculate that. The only thing he didn't do was, throw for like 400 yards, but he didn't need to because he controlled the game so well. I mean, I watched the replay of that game in Detroit, and that ball looked so great. He didn't throw every ball perfectly, but he gave his players a chance to get that ball every single time. They definitely came down with contested balls, and David Moore had a great juggle to get that touchdown. Doug Baldwin had a great grab to convert a 2nd and long, and high pointed the ball really well to make sure that no one could grab that. But the idea that Russell Wilson's actually being limited, I think that's the wrong question. I think what it is Russell Wilson maximizing his opportunities is the winning formula. But to Zeb's point, it's having that strong defense. It's having a dominant running game. It's having an offensive line that can give him time, and when he needs to scramble, he can find that yardage, because that's something he did really well. He was, when he ran super efficiently. He only ran for first downs, and on play action, he looked unstoppable. I don't know what else you could expect from a quarterback, and because he does it so well and he makes a lot of it look really effortless, I mean, I don't know, do you guys remember the touchdown that he threw to Tyler Lockett into the corner of the end zone? He was running to the side, and it looked like he just kind of flicked it with his wrist, but it was like perfectly away from the defender. All the announcers, all the people that watched that play, all the analysts said, like, well, the defender basically did all that he could, but that was the perfect throw and the perfect catch, and it's not his fault.
Well, that's the thing. There wasn't a lot of window there. It was just, and that's one more thing that's pretty great. That I think it's actually a difference. Besides everything else that's been different, Russell Wilson's trusting his receivers more now, or is trusting the people's running the routes now more than he did in week 1 or week 2. I mean, there's been a ton of other differences as well, but that's also true. I don't think he throws that ball in week 1.
I don't think he throws that ball in week 1 to anyone other than Tyler Lockett. I know this is a question we had once Tyler Lockett got that extension. Tyler Lockett's not getting the yards, but he's doing everything else you would want to see from a guy making that kind of money every year, right?
Have you ever seen somebody get a contract and then, like, it immediately ups their game? It's weird, isn't it? You always worry like their game's going to drop off, and if it doesn't drop off, you reckon it's going to stay normal, right? Stay at that level. Like, when you extended Russell Wilson, you're like, hey, I don't mind giving Russell Wilson the money because I know he's not going to get lazy when you give it to him, but I don't know if I'd give it to, such and so-and-so. But, like, you gave Tyler Lockett the money, and, like, all of a sudden, like, you're like, I don't know if he's worth it. And all of a sudden, like, he's earning it. It's pretty awesome.
I mean, the crazy thing to think about with Tyler Lockett is he's already tied his season career in touchdowns in the season, which is 6. Yeah. And he has 6 touchdowns in 7 games, which is really, really crazy to think about.
It's more than Julio Jones.
He doesn't have the touchdown to catch ratio of a David Moore, but he's doing a pretty good job.
David Morris turning into like the Chris Carter. All that dude does is catch touchdowns.
Yeah.
Psh, touchdowns.
Final thoughts on Russell Wilson.
He's my hero.
You gonna extend him now, Ross?
No.
No? All right. Just checking.
You gotta stick by your principles. I don't believe in the Peyton Manning school of roster building. So
what if the rest of the roster is set for a couple of years and it comes down to?
Well, then you go find because there's a couple positions where it's really, really hard for rookies to have that influence, that domination. So if you can find the rookie quarterback on the, not rookie quarterback, but a guy on this rookie deal, then you've got $20 million you can go out. You can either get one more elite cornerback, you can get two really, really, really good linebackers, you can get two really, really good, one elite offensive lineman. I mean, like, the positions that are really, really fine. Not that not that quarterback isn't, but I mean, like, there's just so much else you could do with that money. It's also the economics. Like, if you're going to spend $30 million, you're going to spend 1/5 of your salary cap on that position, but you're not going to get the production out of it, then that's an inefficiency in the market.
Inefficiency of the market, but it's also what the market dictates. And you can't always control that.
Yeah, right. But again, anytime you see inefficiencies in markets, that means there's something there to exploit, which is what they did. And like that's why everybody has hopped on board, right? Once they did that, that's why the Rams are like so all in this season, right? Because like they've got Goff on his rookie contract. And like that's why the Eagles are so in right now to to not give up on this season, because right now they've got Wentz on his rookie contract. Like, everybody's following that model now. Lots of people copied the Seahawks as far as the defense goes, but they've subtly also gone all in. Because remember how people, like, oh my God, 2012, people just would not shut up about the fact that the Seahawks are practically cheating because they're only paying their quarterback $1.50 a game and a cup of rice. So, do you remember that?
I do remember that, but I also remember that there are a lot of terrible rookie quarterbacks out there.
Teaching, right? Like, cheating is weird.
Well, yeah, you're right, but you also, I mean, you're absolutely right. I totally agree with your philosophy, but the problem is you're throwing that all away if you don't find the right guy to play quarterback.
You're right.
All the other money you're spending, all the other stuff you've done. If you end up with Nathan Peterman,
oh God,
you know what I mean? I get it. But my counter argument, if you extend him, you're essentially potentially throwing it all away anyway. Paying him so much, you can't equip the other positions. Because, for example, like Matt Stafford, for example, seems to be just as good. Not just as good as Russell Wilson, but just should be like everybody considers him to be like a franchise quarterback. But you have to pay him now so much to keep him there that you're never going to be good enough, and he's probably not good enough anyway. And like Matt Ryan, now they're not going to win it again. And Drew Brees, once he got his like giant contracts, like his biggest ones, they don't go back again. Like once you get people into these third contracts, quarterbacks, except for the very, very once in a lifetime people like Peyton Manning, you don't go back again when you have to start paying a quarterback. Though, so it doesn't happen. So I mean, like Joe Flacco went, he was good enough to take his team to the Super Bowl, even though he's not even that great, because they didn't have to pay him anything. Once they had to start paying Joe Flacco, they haven't come anywhere near. That's just my take on it.
It's a take, and I know exactly where you're coming from, but I think to Zed's point, you basically have to play a perfect roster to make that work, and I think that's where it's difficult. So I in theory agree with your concept, and I think the Rams are going to be a really, really good example of what they do with Goff after his contract's done. But I have a hard time thinking that it's a roadmap to success. I do think what you're saying, it has a lot of merit, because being able to save money anywhere in a roster and spend that on marquee players that maybe have a better cost-efficient ratio than the quarterback position, I think it's definitely worth exploring. But it's also limited opportunity.
Yeah, we're Agree. And we'll probably never find out because the NFL is so amazingly conservative in their management style, right?
Yeah. Hey, but really quickly, Birdfinger's got your back. He says he totally agrees with you.
Well, of course he does. He's a very smart man.
well, let's move on. Let's move on to the roster building because that actually takes us to the Hawkscast Corner. So this is topic number 3. Ross, this is for you. Seahawks released wide receiver Brandon Marshall. Is this roster good enough?
Yeah. First of all, I called that. I called that in the website and on the podcast a couple times.
We all knew it was going to happen eventually.
Right. I mean, it was just a matter of time. I thought it was going to happen to buy. So it's a little bit weird timing. God, it was a bit of a psych out, wasn't it? Psych out. Like they released him. I'm like, what? They doing some sort of 2-for-1 trade today? You're making space. It's a trade deadline. Who we bringing in? And we're bringing in nobody. Yeah, this roster is awesome. This roster is full of the young guys, and Pete Carroll is more comfortable with the young guys, and you can hold that against him. You want to call him a college coach if you want, but who cares? Because it works, baby. And he's teaching and he's coaching who he wants to coach now. And he's going to give all the young people all the time. Brandon Marshall was really cool, and he really helped Trey Flowers. And I got to say, my watching him during training camp has kind of like changed my image of what Brandon Marshall was like. Because before that, all I could remember really was back in the Bronco days when he was like manic depressive and not on his medication. And one practice, like he was just kicking the balls, like the practice balls from practice, like off the field. So they couldn't even practice. It was weird. That was like my long-standing image of like, what a dick. Sorry. But like he was like, coaching up Trey Flowers and being a really cool guy and connecting with the crowd. Don't think he ever really was a good match with the Seahawks, although I wanted him to be. But him letting go, yeah, it's one more sign that we've got who we need. We probably need one more receiver, but you know what? Bring Caleb Scott. Dude, why do you have 2 first names?
Catholic.
Yeah. Anyway, that dude, like, apparently they really like him, and like, which is a little bit. He's the guy who didn't show up that much during training camp and preseason, but he's a heady player, and they like that as well. So maybe that guy's got a place now. But yeah, I mean, like Brandon Marshall, cool dude. I appreciate what he did, especially like I said for Trey Flowers, and I salute him. And his career is probably done now, but this is like him leaving is a sign that we're ready to compete now. Pete's super comfortable with what we've got now and where they're going to be, because most of these players are just going to get better and better and better. Trey Flowers is in his whole life started 7 games at cornerback. So everything, next game is going to be another 13% improvement or 13% more experience over what he had last time. So we can just get better and better and better as the season goes on. David Moore is going to have more experience as an NFL starting practically wide receiver. So I'm good to go, man.
Zeb, what about you? Where are you at with this roster and with Brandon?
Yeah,
Marshall
I think
leaving?
Ross pretty much said it all. I think
Sorry.
I think they're good enough, barring any major catastrophes or anything like that. I think we got a strong squad that should only get better as the year goes on.
Do you want another wide receiver? Or are you ready to go forward with a bunch of tight ends?
I think we're fine. I think we're good.
So we've got a roster. So what do you want to spend it on? Who gets a Brandon spot?
Well, I mean, yeah, sure. Let's bring in Des Bryant and see what happens.
Oh, you're not.
Des Bryant always on Twitter saying, "Hey, I'm available. I'm going to sign soon. Mr. Positivity."
Well, so is Ocho Cinco. I mean,
I think we can never have enough bodies to rotate on the D line, or something like that. You know what I mean? So if
I'd be down with that.
There's somebody out there that they can bring in just to put into the rotation.
Right.
It seems like the administration of Pete and John has a never-ending capabilities of finding people to play D-line, whether it's inside or outside. They always find somebody.
Yeah,
one of the defensive backs who was with us in the training camp and preseason got released by Buffalo. Was that Dante Johnson?
Dante Johnson just got released. Real quick,
I want to bring him back.
Birdfinger says the D-line has improved as the season went on, as long as they get pressure, and DJ Fluker keeps smashing fools in the O-line. this team can give anyone a game come playoff time. And Boy X Scout chimes in, say plus Ed Dickson, holla. I think it's sad to see Brandon Marshall go, but I think you're not missing anything from a production standpoint. You're missing maybe what he brought off the field, and I think it was always positive. But this release is kind of not that different from the other times Seattle has brought in kind of a older, big-sized wide receiver, something that I think they always covet just because it's such a matchup nightmare, even though they don't necessarily use it well. But this happened with Terrell Owens. He didn't even make the roster. We saw this with Braylon Edwards. He played in 2012. He actually had a couple game-winning catches. But I think this roster is good enough because what they want to do, they do so well. I mean, they had George Fant coming out as a tight end like 14 times in that game. Like, every time they said number 74 had ruled as an eligible receiver. And what was crazy is he was the tight end, but they'd line him up at left tackle, and then they're moving Dwayne Brown to the right side, and he was lined up at the tight end position, playing on the line. They're doing things that I don't think we would ever expect them to do with the offensive line. I mean, George Fant was playing a stack wide receiver position on the end lines with another wide receiver, and everyone's like, "Oh, is he going to get a pass? Are we going to throw to George Fant?" And if they do that, Birdfinger's calling it. Fant has got to get a pass.
Well, I was going to say, I think one of our predictions should be what week does George Fant finally get a pass thrown to him? I think it's going to be really late, like week 13 or 14.
I think what it is this is a team that I think Seattle envisioned what they thought they would have starting in week 1. Injuries obviously played a big part in that, but the addition of DJ Fluker and J.R. Sweezy as the left and right guard respectively have been nothing other than transformative. Even Chris Carson missing a game, they had Mike Davis just play amazingly. There's a lot of players that I don't know if we expected to play as well. I mean, Tetra Thompson, I thought he had an okay game. He made it up with the forced fumble, but I think he kind of let I feel he was kind of responsible for those 2 touchdowns, but I don't think he's making the same mistakes again and again. He got caught peeking the backfield because he thought Stafford was going to get sacked, but he's playing at a high enough level that I'm comfortable with him and Bradley McDougall as our starting safeties. Those are question marks that I think that every one of us has. Birdfinger, commenting about Trey Flowers, and I did not expect Trey Flowers to be the starting corner for this year. That blew my mind. I know, Ross, you were big into Trey Flowers because of his size and all his measurables look like the prototypical corner, but this is a guy who was drafted in
my best season
the 5th round. Drafted in the 5th round, and they're going to start him as a safety and start him at corner because, hey, you're long lane and we're going to teach you how to play the kick step. That boggles my mind that they did that. And that's what I think makes this season so interesting and so unique in this roster. It's what they wanted at the beginning of the year. We didn't get to see it until weeks, 4 through 7. And who knows? Maybe with, Ed Dickson back, we're going to see the game really expand because he had a great game. His first catch was a touchdown. That big play on 3rd and 1 where he fooled all the linebackers and snuck it down for a 40-yard pass. Maybe
I was really happy to see him because I kind of felt like when they put him on, what was it, PUP?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on PUP, and then Disley early in the season was fire, and I felt kind of bad for Ed Dickson because he was brought in because we really, really, really this blocking tight end because of what we're going to do because our offensive line is awful, and then he got PUP'd and he didn't want to be. And I was like, oh, this sucks. They're going to just end up releasing him, and he's going to have a wasted season. He's going to feel bad for having ever signed with Seattle. But then Ed Disley gets hurt. But even still then, I'm like, oh, my God, we don't need a blocking tight end because we actually have an offensive line this year. But a couple of people said, he probably catches better than we think. It's just that he's always been used mostly as a blocker. But that dude can catch, and then all of a sudden Yeah, he can. So he's probably more of an all-around tight end than he's ever been used before, and we'll probably get used that way for Seattle this year. I'm really happy for him because I was really going to feel like kind of late in your career and you're going to waste a whole year in Seattle. I felt bad for him, but it's working out for him.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon.
Final comments on the roster?
I got nothing.
Do we have a Canadian this year?
I don't believe we do. We lost our double Canadian duo this offseason.
No,
So
I was going to say we could have had like sort of like a international thing going on, but we lost. We only have Aussie now.
Yeah.
Aussie represent.
Michael Dixon, GOAT. So, what you going to do?
He's not. I mean, like early, like in the preseason, we talked about him being like rookie of the year, but he's not that awesome, is he? I mean, he's awesome, but he's not like that awesome. He's not changing the game as much as we thought he was going to.
No, and I'm watching other games, and I'm seeing punters do all kind of the.
There's another Aussie punter out there. Who is it? I forget who it is. There's another Aussie punter, and he's doing some of the same stuff. Anyway, I forget who it is. There's one other team. It's not getting the press because like nobody like moved up to take him in the 5th round. But there's one other Aussie punter.
Yeah,
but it's going to be a trend.
All right. Let's move on here to topic number 4. So topic number 4, as always, we talk about the upcoming opponent. So it is the Los Angeles Chargers of Carson, California. And if you don't know why I'm saying that, it's a joke about teams in LA that don't actually play in LA. They play in like the suburbs of LA because LA is such a big city. Their suburbs get their own names. Is Phillip Rivers the type of QB that can cause the Seahawks fits? I have my own ideas about this because Seattle has never Russell Wilson in the Russell Wilson era since 2012. They have never beat the Chargers, whether they be San Diego or LA, at all. Actually, Russell Wilson has not beaten 3 teams in his career based upon the fact they play in the AFC and they don't get a lot of opportunity. We'll talk about that in a second. But is Phillip Rivers the type of QB that can cause Seahawk fits? I forget who's supposed to go on this one. Whose turn is it?
Zeb goes first.
All right, Zeb. What do you think?
Yeah, I know. We've seen him do it. I think Phillip Rivers is 2-1 against us. Is somebody talking? Am I tripping?
You're talking.
Okay, no, I keep hearing somebody talk while I'm talking. Yeah. Phillip Rivers drives me crazy because he's exactly that guy. At least he has been in the past. I got a lot more confidence though coming into this week after the way we played the Lions. I mean, yeah, sure, Stafford got his yards. Numbers didn't look too bad on paper, but I think we're built to beat those kind of teams right now. Chargers have kind of a middle of the road defense. Huh?
I was just gonna say, like, Matt Stafford's numbers got saved by that late cheap touchdown. So
yeah. No, I'm saying he had his 300 yards. His completion percentage was pretty good, but it didn't really matter, right? Because we had that game under control from a pretty early point. So. The fact that this game's at home, our team is super fired up right now. Things are kind of firing on all cylinders. Rivers is the kind of guy that can cause fits, but I fully expect us to be able to handle him this weekend. If we just keep doing what we've been doing and control the clock, run the ball, sustain those drives, convert third downs, get a turnover to I see us being able to limit him pretty well. A little extra pass rush would be nice. Not expecting it, but get your hands on him a couple of times. I think we'll be okay.
Ross, what about you? What do you think? No, Ross?
Is he a Hall of Famer? Is he a Hall of Famer?
No.
I think he.
Maybe.
Let's see.
No.
A late ad as an old guy.
He's not on a first ballot.
No.
I think he is. But he's patient as F. He is, because he's really, really patient. He'll take what you give him, and the Seahawks do give. They'll give you the middle of the field if you're really, really willing to throw 30 passes for 6 yards down the field all day long, and then gamble that you're going to get a touchdown somewhere out of those. We'll give that to you, right? And he's the guy will take it, and he's a really smart, experience. There's nothing he hasn't seen before, and he'll study the matchups. He's a good studier. He is the kind of guy. He's gonna know that his tight end probably is gonna have a little bit of advantage, or he's gonna know that Keenan Allen's probably gonna be able to run 10 different 8-yard digs, and Trey Flowers is not gonna be able to stop that. So he'll know how to move the team. I think it's gonna be a lot like Stafford. He'll get his yards, and maybe they come up with a couple. So it's going to be they're a dangerous team. He's a dangerous quarterback. He's kind of underrated, I think, and it's not his fault, right? I mean, like, his team hasn't always had a huge amount of success, but that's never been because of him, in my opinion. I don't like the dude at all. I don't trust anybody that doesn't swear. God damn it. I don't trust anybody that doesn't like that dude. Like, does he have more kids than Cromartie or less?
I know he's got a grip of kids, but I don't know if it's as many as Cromartie, though.
But his are all with the same woman, so it's a little different. But and he knows the names of all of them. So that's quality. Anyway, yeah, I think he's a dangerous person, and he can give his fits. I still think we win. It's at home. I'm so excited for this game. I wasn't going to go to the game, but I got so excited after the Detroit game I got tickets, even though I had sold mine. So that's that. Yeah. Anyway, I think so. What do you think, Sam?
I think that Phillip Rivers is definitely the type of quarterback who is uber patient, willing to take the 3, 5, 6 yards that the Seahawks are willing to get. But again, that's where, like, in the old Legion of Boom, they would do that because what they're going to do is eventually they're going to tip the ball, they're going to strip it from a receiver, and they're going to get a turnover. But we didn't see that for a long time, but we're seeing that now. The Seahawks are plus 10 in the turnover margin right now.
Plus 10, number one, baby.
And they're getting it in all different kinds of ways. It's not just them forcing interceptions. It's not them just sacking the quarterback, getting a fumble. They're getting it throughout every level of the game. But, you know, the thing is, I think that traditionally, yes, Phillip Rivers is the type of quarterback that's going to cause fits, but not with this defense. What I think is going to cause more fits is going to be Melvin Gordon. If Melvin Gordon's healthy, that's who I'm most concerned about, because I think that because we're so willing to give up the underneath, if we can't tackle well, if we don't have sound tackling, which maybe isn't that big of a problem now with KJ back, if we can't wrap people up, and if we can't make it so that they get the completion and they're down, that's where we're going to get hurt. And I think that's the only risk. Is that a Phillip Rivers issue, or is that a defensive issue? Maybe a little bit of both. But I'm more concerned about Melvin Gordon and him getting the ball in space and then maybe getting one cut and juking, more so than I am about Phillip Rivers, like, going over the top and taking a risk, as Boy X Scout says on the Twitch chat. I really feel that Phillip Rivers is not going to get his way with Seattle this time around. But I also kind of feel like it seems like we play them all the time because we play them in the preseason. Russell Wilson's only played, this is only going to be the second time he's played against the Chargers in the regular season, which is kind of crazy to think about because we see them every preseason.
It was that 2014, the game when it was 187 degrees on the field.
Yeah.
God, I hated that game. I was at that game. That was absolutely sucked. I've said this before. Awful. Like, it just there was so many weird things about that game. I've never been to a stadium where, so it was San Diego Chargers at that time. I'm not saying it wrong. Chargers versus Seahawks. The Chargers were not on jersey in attendance, and it wasn't the Seahawks. Like, I've been to Arizona. The number one jersey you see is the Seahawks, right? But it wasn't the Seahawks either. The number one, like, jersey, there wasn't one. Like, it was such a motley. It was a weird. There was, like, Joe Montana's and Michael Irvin, Joe Namath's. Like, it was just, like, this random jerseys in the stadium. There's no shade anywhere. They ran out of water in my section. Like, my friend's wife, girlfriend, were they already married? No, they were not married. My friend's girlfriend had to go to the next section down to go buy us water because they ran out of water in 105-degree weather. Bizarre place. Downtown was cool though.
Real quick before we move on, because this is the last topic for today. What do you think is the most impressive win that they have? So I'm going to read them off to you real quick. So they lost to Kansas City, 28-38. They beat Buffalo, 31-20. They lost to the Rams, 23-35. They beat the Niners, 29-27. They beat the Raiders, 26-10. They beat the Browns, 38-14, and they beat the Titans before their bye week, 20-19.
20-19.
20-19.
I guess that's their. Wait, isn't that the one where the Titans went for 2 inexplicably?
Yes, Mike Vrabel went for 2. They didn't get it, even though they had 2 shots, and they lost that game in London.
That's their most impressive win, I guess. God, they suck worse than I thought. Holy crap, dude.
Boy X Scout Peter, their first win was week 2 against the Buffalo Bills, 31-20, when the Bills could score points.
Wow, people. It's funny because before the Lions, even after the Lions, people were saying Seattle doesn't beat anyone. But holy crap, dude! That's like a who's who of who sucks in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a true point because people don't want to give credit to the teams that Seattle has beat.
You can only beat the people who are on your schedule. You can only play the game you have in front of you. But when they have played other people, they didn't beat them. So, wow, man, that's.
And if you use the relative game theory that we beat this team, that team beat that team. Maybe that doesn't mean that we beat the other team, but at least gives you an idea. So they lost to the Rams by 12. They beat the Raiders by 16. We thrashed the Raiders, and we lost to the Rams by 2. So maybe that bodes well for us.
I don't really buy much as we beat them by, they beat, but that kind of stuff. But just overall, their wins are not impressive.
Not impressive. Maybe that bodes well for us, and we'll find out once we get into some predictions.
It definitely does. It definitely are. We favored?
I believe we are favored.
We were 2.5-point dogs last week, right?
We were a dog on the road.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
I'm gonna find out if we're favored.
What's the over-under for our game? They're still showing us week 8. All right, so week 9, the Seahawks and Chargers. It is a push.
Aww.
So they're saying that they might be a slight favorite.
Okay, well, we'll see. Just get you more money if you put your money on. Get your money on. That's legal now.
Well, let's get our predictions in. So, Ross, I'm going to hit you with all our predictions first. So, what's your final score for this game, Seahawks and Chargers?
31-24.
Sounds good. Zeb?
34-17.
I think the Seahawks are going to run the ball a shit ton and really control the clock, so they're not going to give the Chargers a lot of chances. So, I'm going to say 21-14.
Cool.
Ross, who gets more touchdowns, Russell Wilson or Phillip Rivers?
Throwing or just generally?
In general.
Russell Wilson.
All right.
We tend to throw it into the end zone these days, even with a better. It's a 3-to-1 ratio as far as throwing in versus running.
Yeah, he'll get his 3 again.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that the Seahawks are going to keep running that ball, which means it might be limiting to what Russell Wilson does. So I think Phillip Rivers might get the touchdowns, but he'll get 2 touchdowns to Russell's 1, so not a blowout. Who's going to have more yards, Chris Carson or Melvin Gordon?
Rushing or total?
Total yards.
Gordon.
Yeah, Gordon.
Fantasy. He's on my fantasy team. I have to start him. So, Gordon.
If he's healthy. They were kind of messing around with maybe he's not ready.
That emergency, just pulled the plug on him a couple weeks ago, killed me.
Yeah, I feel you.
I had no idea they were going to do that. I wasn't ready. I got 0 points out of that dude.
All I know is that same thing happened to me, Ross, but I was going to lose those games, or I ended up winning those games anyway, so it didn't matter. But I think that Gordon, because Seattle's really rotating in Mike Davis, they're giving Mike Davis a lot of snaps, Gordon's going to come out with more total yards. What type of turnovers are we going to see more of that the Seahawks cause? Interceptions or fumbles?
Interceptions. 2.
Zeb?
1 each.
1 each. We're going to push.
Push.
I'm going to lean towards fumbles, man. I mean, these Seahawks team, they're hitting guys hard and popping that ball out. I'm going to say.
Can we
fumbles.
say the name Bradley McDougall? Like, I feel like he's getting ignored. We haven't talked about him at all, but he's probably been our best defense guy.
I think you have to
Bradley
say him. Yeah.
Let's just shout out to him.
Real quick, Boy X Scout and Birdfinger also believe Russ is going to get more touchdowns. Birdfinger is calling it 24-23 Hawks. Boy X Scout says because it's a West Coast game, he thinks RB is going to get the running backs are getting a lot of receiving, and Rivers fumbles once. So this is going to be an interesting one. We'll see. I'm interested to see what you guys think. Yes or no? Chargers timeout to prevent a delay of game.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they'll be at least. It's great because when you play the AFC teams, they don't get to play in our stadium very often. They never really get. We've talked about this before. Like, we've sort of lost some of our home field advantage because teams get used to it. But like the AFC teams, they don't get used to it as much, do they?
No, not at all. Zeb, what about you?
Yeah, it'll happen.
Yeah, I put this in there. I think it's going to happen.
They come only like every 8 years or something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Ross, yes or no? Seahawks defensive score.
No, but it'll be close. You see like one of those fumble recoveries return to like the 3.
Zeb?
Yeah, let's do it. I'll take one.
That'd be cool.
It would be cool. I got Seahawks defense in a bunch of fantasy leagues, so I'd like for them to do it, but I don't think they will, just because they've dropped a couple pick six opportunities. Boy X Scout's kind of with me. Not that I don't think they have the ability, but I think what happens is they're going to cause fumbles, and fumbles are a lot harder to return, just because the ball's on the ground a lot. Compton chiming in on the Twitch chat says, "Go Hawks! What do you think of B Marsh leaving?" We're all in agreement that it was kind of something that was on the horizon. It was going to happen eventually.
I mean, this last game he had 2. He was in for 2 plays.
2 snaps is all he got. So yeah,
he was in for 2 plays, and he apparently after the game,
he bolted pretty quickly from the game.
He knew it was coming, and again, I respect him a lot. I respect all the effort he put in, not just with the team, but to the fans. He was really trying to get in training camp. It was awesome. And again, I've mentioned earlier today, but he put in so much extra time with Trey Flowers to make sure Trey Flowers was legit starting cornerback. Kind of pushed into that situation quickly. So really, really good for the team. Maybe in some cases, like I feel like if he was a guy who played special teams, they would have kept around. Sometimes you keep somebody around, not for what they do on the field, but for off. But there's just not enough to keep him around.
Yeah, there's not a spot for him. All right, last 3 predictions. Over under Rashad Penny touches 4.5.
Under. Wait.
Wait,
Including
under.
Kickoff returns. Yeah, over. But only on specialty.
Zeb, where were you at?
I think it's under either way.
I think it's over because the Seahawks are going to run the rock. They're going to dominate that game. They're going to run the clock over. And they're going to need to give him some touches, kind of like they did in that London game. Compton,
Mike Davis is the guy that runs out the clock.
Hey, man, on that 8.5-minute drive to close out the game in London, Rashad Penny got the ball. He played well. But I see where you guys come in, putting the positive energy out there.
As a motivator. That's sad, but Penny's like his presence motivates like Chris Carson to be the best he can be. So that's literally like Rashad Penny's like role on the team at the moment.
Hey man, whatever works. Whatever works.
Yeah, exactly.
Over under Frank Clark sacks 1.5. Home
Under.
game. Home game.
I'm gonna go push. It is gonna be one.
Oh yeah, I can accept that.
1.5 sacks.
Yeah, because like he's gonna split one with Deion Jordan.
Yeah. I'm going over. I give him 2.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give him
Plus
2.
that one he splits with Deion Jordan.
I'm gonna give him 2. I'm
2.5.
gonna give him another forced fumble off a strip sack. I think he's.
Well, that goes without saying.
Yeah. Birdfinger's saying over. He's saying 3 to 4 sacks for Clark. So that would be a great
awesome.
day.
If you had like a 4-sack, like just beating Phillip Rivers into the last week, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Last prediction of the night. Over under big hits 2.5.
Over.
Yeah, let's go over.
It's a home game, man. I feel like that crowd's going to be amped up. They haven't seen the
They're going
Seahawks in so
T2.
long.
I reckon T2 and Bradley McDougall both get 1, and let's go with Griffin on special teams taking somebody out as well.
KJ is going to knock somebody out.
I think KJ had a great game. I mean, I know they want to give him like some rest, but I thought he had a great game coming back this year.
I did too.
Yeah.
And
I want to change one of something we talked.
all right.
I know we're, but we talked about, like I said, week 12 or week 13 that George Fant would finally get his first catch, but I'm checking out some all 22 from the Lions game, and I had the first time George Fant ran routes. There's at least one play he actually like ran a route, so it was inside the red zone. So I'm gonna say it could be this week that George Fant catch a catch.
Ooh. Crowd will go insane.
Like they have him going out, man. They have him running around. It's unbelievable.
Check this out. It's when he is on special teams and Michael Dixon takes a snap and throws it to him for the touchdown. How about that?
George Fant?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be tight.
Michael Dixon to George
throws
Fant.
Can Michael Dixon throw a football? Like he grew up in Australia. Right? He didn't play American football until he was like 18.
He can do anything.
He's the GOAT, Ross. Rookie of the goddamn year.
No, legitimately, I don't think he actually knows how to throw football at all. Like every football player does normally, because like we all played it, if we all played it on the schoolyard, but he didn't do that. So I legitimately don't think he knows how to throw football.
Well, I've seen John Ryan throw a football, and that was ugly as sin. So Michael Dixon probably could learn.
But John Ryan's Canadian, so
yeah, that's true.
Canadian football. So
but John Ryan's been playing football for a lot longer, so maybe that's a slight edge to him.
Yeah. There's one more thing we have to briefly talk about is Michael Kendricks.
Michael Kendricks.
8 weeks.
8 weeks.
8 weeks. Oh my God, that's longer than people who beat their wives. What the hell?
We don't have enough time on the podcast to talk about Michael Kendricks, but
I just gotta say that.
Yeah.
At least we have a time frame. I'm happy we have a time.
If anything, there's a thread on that on hawkscast.com. Go to Hawkscast. Go to the Seahawks forum, and there's a comment on there. I've left my comments. I think it's ridiculous, but got to save that for another time. Maybe when he returns to practice, maybe when he returns against the Vikings, we'll have a chance. But it's definitely something worth discussing. But too many positive things to talk about, not enough time. So we do have time for shout-outs. Gentlemen, shout-outs.
Shout-outs.
Shout out to Chunk from the Goonies.
Yeah, and Short Round from Temple of Doom.
Fair.
Where's that dude?
I don't know. Shout out to Boy X Scout, Birdfinger, and Compton for chiming in on the Twitch chat. We also had someone else, Bub.
Thank you, guys.
Bub, where you at, Bub? Bub's fan number 1. Guys, thank you, or gals, thank you for checking us out. Shout out to Dubai. I showed Boy X Scout earlier today that Dubai loves our forum, so go to hawkscast.com if you want to rent a car, if you're looking for training, if you're moving, if you need childcare.
We are so big in Dubai.
We are huge in Dubai. I don't know any other Seahawk fans in Dubai, but we got them all apparently. So shout out to Dubai.
I gotta say, I figured out why we're so big there, but I'm not gonna tell you.
Well, we'll save that for later. So go check us out on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast, Seahawks Forum. We are on Facebook at Seahawks FanTable. Go to hawkscast.com. And we are the Seahawks FanTable Podcast. I'm Sam. They are Ross and Zeb. And we thank you so much for listening. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Hawks.